everyone. I'm Sean Dubervac. I'm the Chief Economist for the Consumer Technology Association and author of Digital Destiny. We're here at CES 2016. We're here at Gary's Book Club, and I am joined by Joris Merks-Benjaminsen, who is the author of this book, Online Brand Identity, The Ultimate Guide to Designing Your Digital Branding Strategy. It is an extremely exciting time to be here at CES. Joris, thank you so much for joining us. Let's dive right in. Why don't you talk a little bit about the premise of the book? You mention that brand strategies really aren't ready for this digital future that lies before us. What do you mean by that? How are they not ready?
Well, you know, the book is meant for people that work in marketing and advertising, and it addresses a challenge that I think all of them face. And that is the fact that the whole media mix, like including TV, radio, print, and even outdoor, is becoming digital. And this has been going on for a while, but I think like the upcoming 5 years or so, it's going to accelerate to a point that it's going to create real challenges, particularly for what you would call traditional advertisers. So these would be the ones that you see a lot on TV with mass campaigns, and they have been treating digital as a kind of a side project in the last years. So they literally create media plans that have one line for TV and one line for radio, one line for print, and then somewhere at the bottom of the plan there's one line for digital. And then they call it above the line and below the line. And what is happening now in the upcoming years is that this single line is growing out to be the full media mix, but they don't have the skill to use this new media mix because it's completely different. You can't just push out mass communication because people don't accept that in a digital world, and so they need to learn how to use that new media mix, and if they don't, then basically they will gradually lose their ability to communicate with consumers altogether.
So you talk in the book about digital-first brands. What do you mean by being a digital-first brand?
Well, what you see in companies is that digital started out as a specialism. It's mostly actually like it started out as the department that created the website, something like 15 years ago, right? And then gradually this department became bigger as people started buying online, so it became the e-commerce department, and that e-commerce started growing. And then suddenly you have the online part of the business, and you have the traditional part of the business as separate teams that start to compete with each other over resources. And mostly in the traditional companies, the offline part is still bigger, so they start out creating an offline strategy, and then they add a little bit online later. And the transition towards digital first is actually when the company starts to realize that digital is not just a side activity, but that it's the starting point of everything you do. And that's actually a very interesting transition, because then the chief digital person can eventually become the chief marketing person if he steps out of his specialist role into a more strategic role.
And so one of the reasons they have to think about digital first is because it isn't just happening in the digital platform, right? The digital aspects of advertising and marketing are starting to influence not just what's happening in the digital space, but also what's happening in the physical space. And you write about that in the book as well, about how the digital nature of advertising will ultimately impact every category. You want to talk a little bit about that? You talk about trading platforms for advertising. What does that look like, and how does that start to materialize?
Yeah, there are a lot of angles actually to that. So what you see is that marketing and advertising are integrating, and online and offline worlds are integrating, and that's both from the consumer perspective and from the perspective of how you manage your advertising and where it lands. And so if you look at it from a consumer perspective, what you've seen happening is consumers very often, they just mix channels. So they don't care if something is online or offline. They just start orienting on their smartphone, and then they might use their desktop, and then they might still buy offline, or they just feel the product offline and buy it online again. They check their smartphone in the store. And so it all integrates with each other. And then if you have these two departments where one does the offline marketing, one does the online marketing, where they should be actually serving the same consumer, they're competing with each other. And that's an undesirable situation. So you have to make that shift to digital first, where digital is the basis of everything. and then you take out that competition between the old and the new world, and both of them start serving that customer that actually mixes everything together. And right now you see that there are tools emerging, programmatic tools, that are capable of actually integrating all the different media. So TV is gradually becoming programmatic, which is about automated buying of digital media space. So there are experiments doing programmatic TV, programmatic radio, etc. So you can manage everything in one and the same system, and it becomes more integrated. So you actually treat the consumer integrated.
So, and how does that work from a very tactical standpoint? How do these platforms, these trading systems, automated buying, how will those be implemented, and how will those work in practice when we're trying to move into an environment where we're creating a very customized, individual marketing experience? So I can watch the type of commercials that I want to watch when I want to watch them, and they're integrated more naturally into the type of content that I'm watching. How is that transformation going to take place over the years to come?
Yeah, I think the key thing that you want to achieve is that you move from a situation where we force people to watch our ads, where you use the digital capability so well, then those are actually the data capabilities, so you can get more meaningful messages to people, and the creative opportunity, because you're not limited to linear video for 30 seconds, you can do lots of stuff, and you need to use those so well that people voluntarily pay attention to your ads and your branded content. And I think it starts with very small steps, and I've created a model which I call 4D brand building, and it has 4 pillars. The first is digital first audience targeting. Second is digital first ads and content. The third is digital first KPIs, and the fourth is digital first data management. And if you get all of them right, then you basically have created your mix of the future. I can maybe touch upon each 4.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. And so first is like the digital first audience measurement, and there are 2 things that need to happen there. So you have these traditional brand and advertising people. Those are very used to doing mass communication, so that you send one message in one moment to everyone, and they need to move out of that way of working and start to think again within their broad audience about all the people that are different from each other, and so different that it's actually weird that you give them the same message on the same moment. So you bring in marketing segment thinking again, and then you start to look for the targeting signals that help you find a particular segment and serve a message that is more meaningful to them. So that's what the traditional people need to do. And then you have the more digital savvy people. Those are very often have a background in e-commerce, and they know exactly everything about digital technology. They know how to use targeting signals, etc., and dynamic ads, everything. But they focus it completely around the moment of purchase. So if you are looking for, let's say, for a holiday, and you say, well, I don't want to buy right now, I just first want to look what the beautiful places are, so you're more in the inspiration phase, then they would never advertise on you because you're not interesting. It's only when you type in book hotel now, basically then they start seeing you as a useful target, and then suddenly you get ads everywhere, buy now, special offer. And so they haven't used their digital skills to be meaningful across the full customer journey. So if you get the brand people to think more in segments, and you get the e-commerce people to think more across the full customer journey, then somewhere they're going to meet in the middle, and then suddenly you use the digital system to be relevant across the consumer journey of different types of people. So I think that's the key thing about the audience targeting. And then you have the ads and the content, because if you have found these people in all these moments and you have nothing else than a 30-second TV commercial and a buy now banner, you still have nothing meaningful to say to them. So the art is actually to create branded content, to create nice brand experiences. You can nowadays you have smartphones with all kinds of sensors in there, and you can use them to create very cool brand engagement. So I've included something like 40 cases of brands that have used technical capabilities in a very nice creative way to create cool, meaningful experiences across the consumer journey. And once you start to do that, then you actually get voluntary attention from people rather than having to force them.
So are there some cases that you have written about that you find especially noteworthy, that companies could follow that model to become more of a digital first brand?
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of them, of course, but the one that I like best, that's really my favorite, is the L'Oreal Makeup Genius. Do you know it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So it's an app and you can download it for free. And it uses augmented reality. And basically you get the app and you watch in the camera for like 1 second, and it calibrates on your face, and then it starts plotting makeup on your face. And it's real time, so if you move your face, the makeup stays on. And you can start swiping for different makeup styles, and you can tap on faces of women, and you say, I want their makeup, and then it plots their makeup on your face. And then you can pick specific products from L'Oreal, so you take a specific lipstick in a specific color, etc., and you put it on your face, and then you can also buy the products, and you can share your face with the makeup with friends. So it basically creates a whole customer journey in an app that is really meaningful. And it's just really creative and meaningful use of new technology. I think that's the great thing about the case.
Yes, it's not an app that I use that frequently.
It even works on my face, right? I checked the picture is in the book.
So how should companies start to think about this, and how should the brand strategy start to evolve? What are some of the first steps companies can take to start to implement these strategies to really become a digital first brand?
I think the first thing to do, and that's actually also what I do in workshops I run with large advertisers, is to bring the people that understand digital together with the people that understand brands, because those are actually not the same people. There's an inverse correlation between digital knowledge and brand knowledge. So the ones that are very good with digital, they don't fully understand stuff like brand identity and brand mission and how you translate it into engaging content. And then you have the people that understand brand and identity, and they don't know enough about digital. So in the worst case, they would just take the TV commercial and put it on YouTube with the same type of targeting they would use on TV. And so neither of them actually uses digital as a full media mix. So you need to bring them together in one room and actually have them create strategy together. And that's literally what I do in my workshop. So I give them a briefing, their own briefing, that they would normally do separate from each other, and they just work on it together. And it's mostly the first time they ever build a strategy together. And so that's definitely the first step, and that's going to make the biggest difference. Second thing is you need to give them space to move out of their targets, because people have targets in companies, and these targets actually define their bonuses, and in the end people are going to do what gets them their bonus.
Yeah.
Right? And so a lot of e-commerce departments and e-commerce agencies, they have a target on getting the lowest cost per CPA. So the cost per CPA is like if you click on an ad, people track how many people buy, and then you know how much you earned. And the way to get a low CPA is to actually advertise just around the moment of purchase. As soon as you move earlier in the customer journey, the CPA goes up. So even though everybody knows you should be relevant across the full customer journey, they still don't do it, because then the CPA goes up and then they don't get their target. So you need to allow them to actually take a part of the budget and make it innovation budget, and then say, okay, this is the budget that you will use to be relevant across the full customer journey. This is your testing budget, and then you will try to measure it better later. I think those two key things, if you get that done and you can stimulate people to start experimenting, then you get this chain reaction of digital transformation.
So one of the things I wrote a lot about in Digital Destiny, obviously, is the transformation from analog information to digitized information, much of that coming from the sensorization of consumer tech, and then ultimately looking at the implications for what digital data will do to the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we live. You talk a lot about digital data decision making as well. How are companies starting to think about that today, and what else do they need to do to become more of a data-driven, digital data-driven, really, decision-making brand?
Yeah, I think there are two things. So one is actually understanding the limitations of data, and the other one is actually to learn to make better use of data. Both are actually important. I think the biggest mistake people make when they think about digital is that they think that data is going to give them all the answers. And the reality is that measurement only works if you focus on short-term sales. And as soon as you start to acknowledge that the customer journey is longer, and as soon as you focus also on transformation stuff, doing things you never did before, then data starts to fail, because long-term impact is harder to measure than short-term impact, and you also cannot measure anything that you never tried. So if you focus just on the data, nothing else, everybody starts to do the same thing, everybody starts to do short-term stuff, and eventually you lose your whole business. So I think that's step one. And then once you acknowledge that, then there's actually a lot of stuff that you can do to make data more relevant. And I think the key thing there is integration. So what we see right now is that the way advertising is managed is extremely fragmented. So you have like search managed in one tool, or maybe video managed in a different tool, and then social is again managed in a different tool. And then because of that, all that data lands in different databases. And then a consumer journey of one individual person could easily look like they were 20 people. And because it looks like there were 20 people, then suddenly the advertising starts to sound like a broken record. So then you have the brand advertising just going like, hi, I'm brand X, hi, I'm brand X. And then the e-commerce goes in and says, buy now, special offer, buy now, special offer. You know? And that's just extremely annoying for people. And so you need to build a database where you first manage everything in one and the same system, and then you store the signals in one and the same database, and it starts to look like consumer journey data, and that's when you can be meaningful across the full customer journey.
Right, so you can take a more holistic approach.
Yeah, and the systems, the programmatic systems that we have today are really trying to create that integration. It's not perfect yet, but it's much better than it was, and you see them developing so fast. Like every quarter there's something new in the systems. So I think like 4 to 5 years from now, it's even strange if you look back how fragmented it used to be.
Yeah. So it's very clear that digital data is before us, that it's changing the way we do business. Certainly it's changing the way we communicate with customers, the way we interact with our clients and those core individuals that we're trying to reach. Joris has outlined some fabulous advice on how brands can become digital first brands. The book is beautiful. I know it's won many awards, so congratulations on that. And for those of you out there looking to learn more about how your brand can dive into the digital future, I encourage you to check out the book. Thank you very much for joining us, Joris.
Cool, thank you.